Of the firms that received contracts through the Hubzone program in the D.C. metropolitan area that you referred to this morning, how did you select the 17 for detailed investigation?
We did data mining. I mean, it was not a random sample, so we cannot project this to the population. And so we used data mining for various types of characteristics of a company. And even the 17 is not all. We looked at the virtual offices. I don't know if you saw that part of this too. We data mined in that case for people where there was like a suite with 10 Hubzone companies using the same suite, which is a high indicator of fraud. So various characteristics like that we looked for.
Okay, thank you. So there are indications that indicate that there may be problems, there may be a reason to go further.
That's correct, and those are some of the tools that we would recommend SBA consider as part of a fraud prevention program.
How many was that out of approximately in that particular Hubzone area? How many firms are we talking about?
In D.C., I think there's about 280 some, but we also looked in suburban Maryland and Northern Virginia. The actual 17 we looked at Hubzone companies that had received a Hubzone sole source, set aside, or price preference award, not just that they were a Hubzone company. We selected companies that had received, with only one exception, at least $450,000 in those Hubzone specific contracts in 06 and 07, obligations on those contracts.
Thank you. Now, of those where you did determine that there's clear evidence of fraud, will you turn this over to another agency in order to pursue this criminally?
We've referred the 10 case examples to the SBAIG for further investigation, yes, sir.
And Ms. Kranza, is that what your agency will do?
Congressman Chabot, we have also assigned what we call a suspension and debarment official to address the 10 companies once we have a list of them and assess whether we should suspend or debar, and up to and including prosecution, as we have done so successfully with the support of the Department of Justice in Kentucky. So there are memorandums that are out already for public review. We believe not only in detection, because as GAO staff has informed me, detection is just one part of the solution. We need to look at deterrence. There's reference to the application and the validation of information. I'm here not to deny that it was lax, that it wasn't lax. I'm here to compel you to learn adequately, concisely, that we are now expanding not only the validation and verification, but also the search engines that were not previously utilized to verify the information on the application. And that is all to prevent the fraud or misrepresentation of information. Okay.
It's my understanding that back in some years ago, maybe it was 02, 03 approximately, that the SBA's Inspector General did an inspection, I believe it was in Idaho, and I think they found 2/3 or so of the those that were on the rolls were ineligible as well. Would anybody, I see some nodding of heads, would anybody want to touch on that?
Yes, over the years the IG has done a number of examinations looking at control issues, and while ours was more current and might have been more expansive, we basically come to a very similar place in that there's a very big problem up front with the certification process. That's also there for the recertification process, that there isn't validation. This is where the biggest problems occur, through the front door. And then what we see is that in those instances where SBA looks very closely at all, asks for verification of information, you see a large number of decertifications, which is, rather than saying that shows that they're on top of the situation, it shows, because they're only looking at a few firms closely, it shows that when there is a close look, there is a problem. So our results are very consistent with what the IG has found over time.
Okay. And for the record, Ms. Kranza, if you're aware, or whoever is, approximately how many Hubzones are there nationwide? I don't need an exact number, but just approximately.
There's approximately 14,000.
14,000 Hubzones? Now, if the ones the one that is at issue today, and then the one that I mentioned in Idaho are just two of literally 14,000, is it reasonable to assume, if you've looked very closely at these and found real problems, that it's reasonable to assume that there are problems in other areas throughout the country?
I would like to answer that question on the affirmative, and that's why we've taken some very aggressive measures to train the district personnel who are currently performing the site visits to physically go out and perform the site visits. And Chairwoman Velasquez had mentioned that at one of our previous hearings, and we went back and looked at assessing how many could we accomplish, and we referred to the IG audit where we came to an agreement that if we could adequately perform 5%, that would be a good measure for us to detect any issues. And it's quite evident that we did not comply effectively to that commitment.
And obviously, one of the reasons that this is so disturbing is the Hubzone, the goal of the program is to help areas that are economically challenged, whether they're in an urban area. I have many of those types of areas in my district in the city of Cincinnati, and there are also rural areas that have these same challenges, and there are limited tax dollars available to help start up and grow small businesses to hopefully improve those communities and create jobs for people. And if those dollars are being essentially ripped off, then somebody didn't like that. If those dollars are being ripped off by those participating in these fraudulent situations, you know, there's certainly that's unacceptable, and so I would be pleased to join the chairwoman in reforming and improving this program so that it's doing what its intended purposes were. Let me just conclude by one more time, Ms. Kranz. Would you, when did you receive the report?
On last Thursday.
Just last Thursday,
yes,
okay.
And it was a verbal report, not a written report.
All right. So it would probably be unrealistic to expect you to have a whole list of things that have already been implemented and a timetable and that sort of thing, but I would assume that this would be a high priority in reforming the program and making sure that these things are dealt with very quickly and very thoroughly. And again, I would be pleased to join the chairwoman.
Would the gentleman yield?
I'd be happy to yield.
Ms.